Just got back from vacation with the family. Can't wait. Super excited to get back into things, get back into the camper remodel, renovation. I'm real excited about the table. I'm going to show you what we got going on. Let's get to it. Obviously, I'm going to replace this. First thing, and I don't understand why. I've never understood why this table, when it's up, it only goes out to like here. As it's down, it's here. You know, you got your mattress. My daughter sleeps on this when we camp. At least she did the one time. And your ledge here. So we're going to extend it out the whole length. So we're going to make a bigger table since we're making a table anyways. So in here right now, all I need to do is start out is we get some measurements. So I need to get my width. So 31 3/4. 4 foot. That's easy. We're going to go 4 foot by, yes, 31 3/4. So what I have here is a 3/4 inch piece of oak plywood. It's a traditional 4x8 sheet. It's a rather expensive piece of plywood. It was like almost $90 for this. So I really don't want to mess it up. I was pleasantly surprised just a few minutes ago to discover that my length needs to be 4 feet. Because guess what? This is 4 feet wide. So I only need to make one cut. Less opportunity to goof it up. I measured my 31 3/4 inch. Then I measured with the rail for my circular saw. You know, because here's where our mark is where we cut. So I always measure that. Put my track on there. You know, I just want as straight of a cut as possible. I've already positioned everything. Made sure that my table's out from underneath my cut. Alright. It is worth my time to take this out there and make sure it fits before I get going any farther. So I'm going to do that. Alright, so it's a good thing I took this out to the camper to make sure it fit, because it didn't. And then I found out it wasn't because of my cut. My cut was fine. It wasn't my piece. The camper itself, that area that the table slides down to sit to make a bed, is not square. At the end it was a little wider, and when you went up towards that front wall, it got a little tiny bit skinnier. Tapped it a few times with a hammer to see if it would fit or not. I mean, it wasn't really going in. I was like, I feel like I could tap it enough to get it, but then it's like, you know, if it's going to be that tight and it's going to be wedged and everything, when you put the whole assembly together, and the whole idea is to just take that table with its hardware and lift it or set it down rather than like slide it in at an angle and everything, if that makes any sense at all. It just wasn't working. So I was like, yeah, so this actually does need to not be so snug and a little bit, have a little more play in it. So I cut a 1/4 inch off, took it out. It actually still, it fits now, but it kind of catches a little bit. So I think I'm going to probably play around with that. I might even take some of that trim that's on there off, that's underneath your butt when you're sitting down on the benches of it. So minor details. Point is, it did need cut down, so I cut it down. Now I'm going to give it a stain, because I want a stained base to this. I don't want it to be this oak color, this natural here. So I'm thinking to myself, and I don't recall if I've ever stained plywood before or not. I'm going to let this sit. I'm going to leave it alone for a bit and see how it dries, because we're back here and I feel like it looks pretty good. And then as you get close, see if it picks up on camera or not. Yeah. Can you see some of the, like, I guess you can call them smears? I don't feel like I've ever had so much trouble. Like, I've gone over it multiple times. I've used my rag. I've tried to dry it off. And I don't know. So we're going to leave it alone and see if it dries like that. I don't know, but I've never had this much trouble with staining before. And so we'll leave it alone. And like I said, you walk backwards here a few feet. Looks fine. And so I've learned from my recent epoxy mishaps and decided I needed to build a mold. So I did just that. And then as you see here, I caulked it in to seal up all the edges, the corners, the bottom. And then I even bought some resin tape off Amazon. Filled that whole area in. After that, I placed my piece of wood that's going to be the table in there. It actually pushed a little bit of the tape down in some of the spots. That's where I will find out later I kind of goofed up. I need to do a little better next time. But nonetheless, we're working on it. Okay. All right, so now we're set up. We're prepped. Here's where we're getting a little creative and fun with this. We're going to put some pictures, some nature pictures that we've taken on this table. We're also going to put some, you know, some leaves, a couple small pine cones and whatnot. So, gonna have a little fun with this. So, it just makes me realize that we've been a lot of places Seen a lot of pretty cool things. It's hard to eliminate any here. Spray adhesive. I'm setting this on top in case any glue, runs out the edges. I'm gonna mix my epoxy. It's a 1-to-1. You guys have seen me use it before. Alright, I took my mask off to finish talking to you guys real quick. That's all the epoxy I have, and I don't have enough to make it that much deeper, so it definitely didn't go as far as I thought it might, but that's fine. Alright guys, I'm excited to finally get this thing going again. It's been sitting for about 4 days. I haven't had a chance to work on it. Time to take this frame apart. Almost none. 2 for 2. I did forget we caulked the corners of this. And the bottom, which of course is what kept all the resin inside and sealed it up. But that's going to be part of why this is kind of hard to get off, isn't it? Okay. Not too bad. Of course, the whole point of the resin tape is to keep this resin from sticking to things, to the table and whatnot. We had a little bit of leakage down here and a little down here. Not terrible. Still, if you watched the last time I used resin, that is light years ahead in progress. So this tape really does an outstanding job of not sticking to the resin. So I mentioned earlier that I had messed up a little bit with that resin tape, and I don't think I had my new table pressed all the way down flush inside that mold. And I believe that's where I had some of those issues with the epoxy on the backside. Nonetheless, what I first needed to do was take that Dremel multi-tool and cut the dandelion, cut the pieces of evergreen tree and whatnot, and make them flush with the rest of the table. Then flip the table back over, work on that resin, the excess epoxy. I used a router and routed the edges of this, and then I started sanding. I went from 40 grit sandpaper all the way up to 330, which is as highest as I have. Between sands, I of course got it wet. I wiped it up with a wet cloth and then a microfiber towel. This is probably the first time I've rolled on polyurethane. I feel like I'm not getting it on as thick. I think maybe this roller's soaking up more of my polyurethane than what a brush usually does. I also, if you've been paying attention, finally got some painting triangles. I feel like that's such a small, cheap tool that is going to benefit, like right now, rather than doing my polyurethane on the countertop and having it run down the sides, sit on the sides and whatnot. This is going to be helpful. Okay, guys, so I'm happy that I've gotten our tabletop completed. Multiple, like 5 layers of polyurethane on the top, 2 on the bottom. It's good to go. I have our old tabletop here. It's time to mount the hardware and get this thing put back in place. So I'm starting with, and it was pretty easy to see on here where our old tabletop used to be, where the hardware was on it. I measured, compared, put notches on our new one. So that's how I know where I'm putting this stuff. And now I'm just going to screw that piece on. That's pretty straightforward for you. let's get that dealt with now. Of course, these pieces go off the very edge here. That's one side. This is the other side piece that goes with it. And I tightened too tight, so I actually got to loosen that up and get that in there. All right, there's those pieces. And now we have our middle at the end here, our foot. This piece right here that holds the table up, it's going to go right about here. This one's 13.5, so let's go ahead and make a mark for that. Okay, now, hypothetically, if these go on here, I think we're in the right place with this. And then these will go straight on that back wall. You can see some notches where they were before. They should screw in and we should be good to go. I'm gonna probably, you know what I'm gonna do? So I'm just screwing that in. I'm gonna crawl under the table, try to get this. I'm gonna set that leg up. So not a lot for you guys to see right now, but we'll keep that camera rolling just for the humor of it. So what I'm gonna try to do is put these pieces right here. These brackets go into the one that I've already screwed to the wall. Uh-oh. I screwed those on upside down because they don't. All right, so I gotta fix those real quick. I just realized that. So in putting this back up, I'm gonna try to put that piece on and mount it and then put the leg down so it's all set up, and then I can get my last pieces secured. And fortunately for me, through talking to you guys, I just realized, you see how these, that is that way, but it goes underside of the table. So actually these need to be flipped so they're facing down, not up. So these were facing like this, but the way this piece goes on, because you want it underneath your table, you don't want it sitting on the top. So obviously that would do nothing. So it actually is going to go facing down so that that table slides in there. So hopefully that makes sense. How? Now I'm going to try to get my table set up. Actually, let me put that up until I get this in here. It's definitely tricky by myself. This is meant to sit down as a bed or that. So if I flip it around here, now let's try that. I think our table's a hair too long because of that hardware that needs to sit down in there. I tested the table and I cut it out and I set it all here without adding hardware to it. And I just realized that, and I think it's not going to work right now. I'm going to have to make some adjustments, but we're going to try it still. We're going to look around here. Well, everything's fitting in there right now. Oh man, oh man. I really don't want to just cut a tip off of that table. I'm debating on what to do here. I never even thought about the hardware. Okay guys, so I went with about as simple a solution as there was. I cut 1/2 inch off this end and I just slapped a quick coat of polyurethane on it just to seal that off because this thing's completely sealed in. Put my hardware back on. There's a little bit of space there for this to move around now. We're in here, we're fitting nice and snug. It's time to screw these pieces on and hopefully this is good to go. I'm hoping when we finish this, we'll find this whole thing works just as it should. We'll see what happens. Hoping everything lines back up too, you know. I am using the longer screws I have for this area because I know this table's, you know, supported by these brackets. Don't want them to just strip out too easily. All right, that's all done. If you remember before, our old table, for whatever reason, only went to like here, so when the kids tried to sleep on it, they were falling off the bed because these cushions were just over here and nothing under them. So we've improved on that aspect. Now the big question, will all of our mounts, are they all right? If we set this up, is it going to go in for a table? Let's find out. Flip this over. Pull that down. Voila. All right, so you guys saw the table laying down as it would when it's into a bed. You know, it sits flat. You saw as I was installing it, it sits there nicely. I brought it up, I think, on camera, so you saw it work once. And as you see, it sits pretty well as a table here. I'm very happy with it. If you didn't get a very good look at the design, you know, we've got some pictures of some of the places we've been in here. I enjoy, you know, we had to cut it in half because it was too thick. It was bigger than the epoxy we did, but I like the dandelion. It almost just looks like a speck or whatever. This was a small pine cone. It didn't turn out great, you know, but it's still there. Some of our evergreen tree pieces, they've kind of got a cool little look in there. Obviously, we've got a bunch of pictures. Got a couple leaves. So I'm pretty happy with how this table turned out. I think it looks really good. It definitely looks a lot better than the table, the press board table that was in here before. So guys, very happy with how that table turned out. I'm going to take a little bit of a break from epoxy. It is a lot of work. It's more work than it looks. At least for me it is, that's for sure. But come on back and see what I'm working on next. Like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys next time.